So did you start talking about Sex in the City yet?
We just started. Oh. I am so glad that Carrie ended up with Big instead of that 70-year-old ballerina.
I know.
Honey, I'm gonna miss my Sex in the City.
Me too, Karen.
But at least I've still got my Frasier and my friends.
Well, wait, didn't you hear Frasier and Friends are going off the air too?
Don't tell me that, Chucky. Not now. Not today.
But Karen, don't you see? We just have to find a new show. Something that combines the gay sensibility of Sex in the City, the gay sensibility of Frasier, and the gay sensibility of Friends.
Why do Frasier and Will and Grace work so well together? See, they exist separately in their own realms, with their own fan bases, and yet they've crossed over, and it's really exciting. They have so many similarities, even though they seem to be completely different shows. And a lot of those similarities are supplied by the je ne sais quoi of the LGBTQ presence, also known as gay sensibility. Let's get into it. So first of all, there's the real-life parodies, this kind of idea of art imitating life. For example, most of the Frasier cast was actually gay and playing straight characters. John Mahoney was gay, but he played the straight father, Martin. David Hyde Pierce, of course, is gay, and he played Niles, the very straight, nervous Niles. The character who plays Bulldog in real life is actually gay, but of course he plays the very red-blooded hetero male. Over on Will and Grace, Eric McCormack, who plays Will in real life, is actually straight, playing a gay character. Then there's Karen, who we never really quite know what she is. Her character's definitely been with women, and is attracted to women, and is always attracted to women in some degree. So I reckon the character of Karen is bisexual. And of course, Megan Mullally, the actor who plays Karen, is straight. So that's the first layer of paradoxical similarities, where they've taken a social marginalization, i.e. being LGBTQ, and have worked it into the story without people even knowing, without the man knowing. It's kind of a joke at the man's expense, or at society's expense. Then there's the other parallels between Will and Grace and Frasier that I find really interesting. There's a number of codependencies in both sitcoms that are so unhealthy that they actually become essential in order for the shows to work. So let's look at those. We've got Frasier and Lilith. Of course, that dynamic is very toxic. Even though they have some sort of proximity to friendship and civility, most of the time it is a very toxic dynamic. Then there's the Frasier and Niles dynamic. They do everything together, they're best mates, but then they also kind of get annoyed by being too close to each other sometimes, and they try and have these episodes where they kind of break off. And by episode I mean actually in the character arc, not actual episodes, where they try and separate and define themselves without the other brother's shadow being right there. And of course, that has numerous consequences, which always seems to bring them back together. Then there's Frasier and BB. You can't forget about BB. She gave me so many loves. I mean, she's great. The show would not be complete without BB. You'll know how toxic and psychotic she is. I mean, she's his agent, for those who don't know, and she is very manipulative. She has this sort of obsession, this low-key obsession with Frasier. She fancies him. They do hook up one time, but then he immediately regrets it, and she responds by sabotaging his new business relationship so that he always comes back to her. And he knows she's the devil. He calls her that several times, and yet he can't deny the fact that working with her brings him more financial windfall. So it's actually very lucrative for him, and it's his own best interests for him to stick with her. Then there's a Niles and Maris dynamic. I mean, where do we begin? Like, that woman has a hold on him like no one else in history, and yet he seems to need her. Not only for, the financial security that comes with her, being born into a wealthy family, but also there's some sort of inferiority complex in Niles that he seems to only get validated by getting treated badly by her. It seems to give him a sense of, yeah, okay, I'm still me. There was one episode where he actually gets a dog post-Maris. I think it's a greyhound, and she exhibits all of the traits of Maris: cold, haughty, sort of ignores him. And he finds that as a comfort. He finds that to be a comfort. This is all stemmed from the toxicity of being in that dynamic with Maris. Then we've got Niles and Daphne. Now, of course, this is a dynamic that is woven through the storyline for the entirety of the show. And of course, again, it's a very unhealthy obsession that he has with Daphne in the 7 years leading up to them being together. And then once they do get together, his obsession with her becomes a stumbling block as well, because he's put her on this pedestal, and it's hard to kind of take off the rose-tinted glasses and see her for who she actually is, as opposed to who he wants her to be or thinks that she is. Then there's the Daphne and Martin dynamic, right? Daphne and Martin, they go at it like an old married couple. Of course, Daphne is Martin's trainer, or physiotherapist, I should say. So she kind of needs to be there because, you know, since getting shot in the hip, his mobility has been reduced and he needs that constant work to keep himself nimble, I suppose. And he hates it. He hates when she, you know, does the massages and, you know, she makes it painful for him because she sort of secretly enjoys it because he annoys her sometimes and he claps back at her. He does, you know, he makes fun of her accent and says how horrible it sounds. And, you know, they just bicker all the time. Again, without those two having that dynamic, I don't know where the show would be. Let's not forget about Roz and Bulldog. Again, Roz hates him. She hates his guts. He's a misogynistic pervert, right? And yet there's something, you get the sense that she enjoys something a little bit about the attention that he gives her. And she kind of also enjoys manipulating him to get him to do things for her because she knows that he wants her so much. And they even hooked up during the show, and that just gave her more access to manipulative power over him. Of course, it backfires when, you know, she starts to try and date other people after she has Alice, and she calls Bulldog in as the babysitter, and of course he intimidates the other guys. He kind of scares them away because he wants her to himself, even though he knows that she won't be with him. He just wants to sort of idolize her on his own, a bit like the Niles and Daphne dynamic. This is one that you may have not noticed. This is one that may get slipped under the radar. The Roz and Noel dynamic. You remember Noel, Star Trek geek, right? And again, the character is a very creepy guy who's obsessed with Roz, the same way that Bulldog is. And yet she finds uses for him. She does utilize his existence, even though he makes her skin crawl. And of course, he also is not a fool, even though he's completely besotted with her. He uses the fact that she needs him as a way to kind of get things from her, whether it's just her going on a date with him somewhere, being his plus one, or, you know, making body contact with him, even if it's just to push him away. He gets off on that. And interestingly, the character who plays Noel is also gay in real life. So again, we have that art imitating life paradox. The only relationship in Frasier in which they're not constantly trying to outdo each other and is quite drastically less toxic than all the others is the Frasier and Roz dynamic. I think this works beautifully. They're sort of best mates. They have each other's backs, even though they also hooked up one time. They found a way to use that as a positive, to bring, you know, to strengthen their friendship rather than have it take them down a toxic route. So they always still have each other's back. They work really well together. So I think that's kind of nice. They're kind of like the Jack and Karen dynamic over on Will and Grace. So again, over at Will and Grace, all the other relationships are super toxic, okay? So again, we've got the Karen-Rosario dynamic. I loved this, like I lived for this dynamic. Rosario has some clapbacks, and of course, there's a mask undertone to her character, which Karen exploits continuously. And again, we'll get into that a little bit later. That'll be another video, because I could just do a whole video on Karen and Rosario. Brilliant. And then, of course, the most unhealthy of all dynamics is Will and Grace. You know, Will is a gay guy who lives with Grace, who is a straight woman. So they're both interested in the same demographic. And they used to date a very long time ago, when they were in college, university or something, or young. They were in their early 20s. It didn't quite work out because obviously Will was gay, but it seems that Grace has never really let go of that. He's like the one that got away, right? She likes to think of herself as someone who can conquer men, slightly narcissistic, and the fact that Will has eluded her to college, regardless of the reason being his sexuality, she's always wanted to keep him close and to sort of have some sort of control over his life, and likewise he's very much invested in her life, always wanting to control aspects of her own life, probably because, you know, his family dynamic was quite fractured and he didn't have much control over that, he didn't have much control over how his father saw him. He always felt this sense of disapproval from his parents about being gay, and somehow having Grace as his beard has made him feel a sense of validation in the world, or certainly in the eyes of his parents. But my favorite parody and my favorite example of art imitating life has got to be Karen's nemesis, Beverly Leslie, right? Who can be directly compared to Gil Chesterton in Frasier. Now, these two guys, who are gay in real life, play purportedly straight men who are clearly in the closet, right? So in Frasier, Gil Chesterton, who's a restaurant reviewer and has his own slot at the radio station, plays a very effeminate, flamboyant guy who everyone assumes to be gay, until in one episode he denies it and denounces it and says, absolutely not, I'm married to my wife, Debbie. And, everyone's like, are you sure, mate? beautiful. Love it. Love it. Love the layers in that. And then over on Will and Grace, Beverly Leslie is married to a much older woman who we never see. He's always out and around with his business associates. He was always some young, hunky guy. Usually a black guy who, there are whispers about what's really going on there, and he denounces it, and he's appalled at the accusations. Brilliant. Now, there is a close-knit LGBTQ community on daytime TV and in cinema. So it's natural that, these actors would all intermingle and hang out at the same places. But seeing a crossover, just like in cartoons when they do it, like The Simpsons when they do Family Guy or Bob's Burgers or whatever it is, there's always going to be a sense of wow. Like, there's always a sense of excitement, of bending dimensions and, like, reality. Just, whoa, boggles the mind, right? I'm really seeing this. And having the two worlds merge takes your breath away. And that's what happened here when Lilith from Frasier, that's Frasier's ex-wife, made an appearance on Will and Grace. Let's watch.
Excuse me, did I leave a cell phone here? Thank you, thanks. This kid's BB.
God love you, Lilith. You're so dry. Your unemotional monotone provides a native balance for Frasier's neurotic histrionics.
Plus, you've got the body of a 14-year-old Korean gymnast.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Well, it's always nice to meet fans, especially in a public place with lots of witnesses and clearly marked exits.
Lilith.
BB.
So, Lilith. Now, we've stood by your show for 10 years.
Frasier's been on the air for 11.
We didn't care for season 8.
How could you end it like this? How could you just walk out on us without an explanation?
Okay, you two really need to let go.
But we can't.
No, I mean let go. You're hurting me. Look, just move on, okay? I have. There's more to me than Lilith.
We've never seen it.
Come on, talk like Lilith. We hate your real voice.
Well, I will if you will. Look, you guys are freaks, man. I'm not Lilith. I'm BB. I'm an actress. I sing. I'm a Broadway dancer. Look at these pins. You know any 40-year-olds who can wrap their legs around their necks? Look, these babies worked for me before Frasier. They're going to work for me afterwards, so don't you worry about Lilith.
You mean BB?
No, I mean Lilith. I want to play that bitch forever.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
What about your pins?
Oh, screw my pins. Frasier is such an easy gig, man. They fly you first class to Los Angeles, put you up in the Bel Air Hotel per diem. I deliver several lines in a robotic monotone, and I'm buying a new Lexus.
And this is a fun trivial fact. Noel from Frasier also featured on Will and Grace when Matt Damon was in it. That was the same episode. See if you can spot him next time you watch Will and Grace. In Frasier, Macaulay Culkin featured as a caller, but he's also appeared physically on Will and Grace. He's not queer, but he's definitely what I would call queer adjacent. He's in touch with his feminine side. He went through those lost years, I call them, after Richie Rich, and when he sort of wasn't getting any work, and he was just out there finding himself in New York. He hung around a lot of gay people, and he has an appreciation for the queer, and he's definitely an ally. Now, all in all, I've concluded that a successful comedy series relies on 3 things in order to be successful. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list of things. I'm sure there's many other things that go into it, but these are the 3 things that I notice as significant. Number 1 is the humor value, right? So the wit, the wordplay, relatability, visual gags. Frasier is massive on visual gags, and so is Will and Grace, largely in part thanks to Karen and Jack, and Rosario as well to some extent, but Jack really steals it with his, with the way he acts. Absolutely genius. Then there's the script quality, okay? How it reads, how believable the dialogues and character development are, right? Is there a nice close-the-loop feeling that completes every episode? Does it have enough twists? And the cast chemistry, is the script reflective of an authentic chemistry between actors? And then, the third and definitely not least, is the queer actors. Think about every sitcom of the 20th century, of the 21st century. Guarantee you there's a sprinkling of queer actors in there that are holding that shiznit together. Whether playing straight or not, it doesn't matter. as long as they are authentically queer, their presence alone is enough to bring that queer magic to the sitcom. There's something different that queer people just bring to the table that you just can't get from straight actors. It's never the same. And straight actors offer something too, of course, and that is an appreciation for the queer, because you can't be on set with a homophobic actor. That just wouldn't work. So all the straight actors that they cast have an appreciation for the queer already, and that just amplifies the je ne sais quoi-ness of that show, the queer magic of that show, which provides the color that every show needs to pop. Think of Ugly Betty. And it's that open-mindedness that allows the yin-yang effect between the straight and the queer to fully optimize and create a memorable show.